Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Kolpak and Izzo podcast, semifinal South Dakota State edition. Bison, Jackrabbits, Saturday morning, 11 a.m., ABC television. The winner goes to Frisco, Texas. It's an even-numbered year. You'd figure the Bison and the Jackrabbits would play. They've done it every year. 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, and 24, Jeffrey. We should have known this was coming.
Well, if the Bison win, we are going to Frisco, Texas to thaw out from the pregame show, outdoors, live and direct, Saturday morning.
Old school, man. We did that Georgia Southern Friday night pregame. Remember that second Georgia Southern game? We were outside. That was
a bit nippy.
Cold.
That was a bit nippy.
So this will be old school for us on Saturday.
It should be known that in our production meeting this week, I was struck down in my hopes of a space heater.
Well, you can bring it. I don't know how much it's going to be to use it.
Well, no, I was. Producer Stacy said no.
Well, you can park your car right behind us there. You can hop in during a commercial break. So there's about 83 storylines to attack. You give me a couple that I'm really interested in blank on Saturday.
I am interested in, will the Bison throw earlier than they usually do? I just don't think they can get a ground game going against this defense. And I'm just curious in their discussions of a game plan. I know it's NDSU. I know it's a tradition. I know it's the West Coast physical run the ball. But do you throw it out the window for this game?
You got to win one game. You got to win however you can find a way to win. Maybe. It certainly proved effective on the last drive against the Jacks in October. Now, South Dakota State didn't have Tucker Large in that game, and All-American safety is back roaming there for the Jacks on the back end now.
There is the theory that teams would throw the ball to open up the run game, opposite of what NDSU has done all these years. And do you do that? I don't know. I just, to me, that's the most intriguing theory is what's the first quarter going to look like? What's the game plan? On the first play, are you going to give it to Marty Brown or Barika Penu off left tackle for 1 yard, which is probably what will happen.
Yeah. To me, I am intrigued if the Bison win the toss, what do? I think they take the ball. Try and do exactly what you're talking about and get the place going.
Ants did that
crazy.
That last half of last year.
Yep.
When he switched things up after the UND debacle and into the playoffs, whenever they won the toss, they took the ball.
Yep. Now, the counterpoint to that, and this is what Polisic has stressed to me specifically throughout the year, is that middle eight. That if you defer, then maybe you can steal a possession at the end of the first half and know full well you're getting the ball to start the second half.
Yeah, and the middle eight meaning the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half.
Yep.
Which to me is like basketball, where a lot of coaches will say the first 3 minutes or 4 minutes of the second half are the most important. And in football, that's where he gets that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why we have to rush in because our show ends at 10:50.
We won't see it.
10:57. Coin toss. We might be in by then, depending on how slick we can get down the ramp on the north end of the Fargo Dome to get into the building. But I'm intrigued to see how that plays out. That's one of them. To me, I'm infinitely curious always with the quarterbacks and how well they know one another. And we talked about this in the matchup in the regular season, but now this is the capper. And I don't think, I'm going to say it, we're never going to see two guys like this play as long as they did at each of their individual schools and as often against one another. It's not going to happen again.
Interesting, and I wrote about it this week on the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic year and its effect on the record book, specifically career records. Now, Braylon Henderson will be playing in his 72nd career game, which at one time you thought there was just no possible way, unless then hell is freezing over. But with Cam Miller, Cam would still be the all-time yardage leader for NDSU passing yards, even without the pandemic year, because he only threw 59 passes in 2021, that spring season.
Yep.
Mark Gronowski didn't need it at all.
No, didn't play at all that whole fall.
And he's got another year of eligibility, but he's not going to use it.
Yep.
Griffin Crosa, same thing. what did he have? 12 points maybe in that COVID year.
Because he barely. I think he kicked a couple field goals that in the spring of 21. Yeah,
so he'd still be the program's all-time career scoring leader, even without that pandemic year. So, but there's also other factors, and you look at it like, and I pointed out in the article, and thanks to Craig Haley, that the NCAA has been inconsistent over the years on career records. Yep. You just let it roll. Adrian Peterson, not the Vikings one, but the Georgia Southern one,
guy,
had over 2,000 yards in playoffs. Not count because the NCAA did not count playoff games toward the record book prior to 2003.
Silly. Yeah, that doesn't make much sense either. By the way, coin toss is 11:03. We can be in there by then. 6 minutes?
Oh yeah, I got to take the 6-minute elevator ride.
You and me both, my man. You and me both to get ready. That those records again, just kind of shake your head at, just like holy cow. Like, but I'm glad you did that because. That story, because I think there's some like, well, he had 5 years
That's
to
unfair.
do it.
Another year. No,
that was, especially Crosa, you'll remember, Jake Reynolds got hurt on the very first kick of the 2019 season. So Crosa kicked that whole year. He didn't kick at all in the spring of 21 or the fall of 21. So he became NDSU's regular kicker in the fall of 2022, and he's been that the last 3 years now.
Yeah, and so
Cam barely played until they made the switch with Quincy Patterson and him. Yeah. That was the midway point of fall.
59 passing attempts, I think 363 yards or something like that. Again, you take those numbers away, he'd still be where he's at. Now, he'd be behind Easton Stick in maybe the completions category or something like that on one record, and he would need to get to Frisco to break that.
Yeah. Which, by the way, there's the other record out there, and that's the all-time wins record.
That's Gronowski.
Mark Gronowski is 49, tied with Easton Stick, and he can get the wins record by himself if the Jackrabbits win the game on Saturday.
And you're saying, how can Gronowski pass Stick? Well, Easton, if you remember, didn't start until halfway through his freshman year, redshirt freshman year, when Carson got hurt. So if Easton starts that whole year,
yes,
easily has that record.
Correct. But
do you think does he give a rip about that? Really now?
Oh, I don't know. Yes, he does.
You think so?
Absolutely. Winning in Fargo and getting that record and going to Frisco.
49 and 3. I think he'll take his rings and go.
I think, and especially a nice round number at 50. Oh yeah.
I think I'll ask him next summer when he's back for his quarterback camp.
No, I'm talking about Gronowski, not Stick. I'm talking about
Stick.
No, Easton, no. He's got, no, I don't
That's
think
what I'm saying.
No, I think Gronowski does, though.
Probably.
Expect the chance to get it in Fargo and have that.
Yes,
that's what I meant. Easton, no. I think he's got his title rings from what he did, and he's A-okay with that, including, by the way, without Easton Stick, the Bison don't win the 2015 title. Just so people remember that. Carson swooped in and won the championship. They don't get there without Easton Stick's stretch of 8 games that season.
He really grew a lot that year, too. I remember his first game was at Indiana State, the first start. He hardly threw the ball. And
he used his legs,
Yeah, he won that game with his legs, but the passing routes or the plays were really pedestrian. And you compare that to that Indiana State and Terre Haute game in the middle of 2014, right?
Yeah. 15. Yep.
15. To his 2017, 2018 in his professional career. It's really, again, another testament to the development of what Randy Hedberg has done with quarterbacks in this program. Now, maybe Randy Hedberg might retire after this year. We don't know. But, he's like the rest of us.
I've been asking him for the last 3 years about that. So.
But if he does, he's going to go down as one of the all-time greatest assistant coaches because the way he has developed quarterbacks, the way he took Stick, the way he took Trey Lance in that 1 year. What he's done with Cam Miller has really been really good. Because if you remember, again, Cam Miller, when he came on as a redshirt freshman, true freshman technically, in the spring of 21, he wasn't nearly what he is today.
Not even. I would say the semifinal performance, everyone will point to that Incarnate Word game when he completed one pass, Jeff. He's night and day from that. That was 2 years ago to what we're going to see Saturday. It's not even close.
I have to wonder, and I'll ask him after his career is over, but I wonder if he has hurt that game.
Cam?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there was a combination.
It just seems so.
Everybody else was hurt. I know that, but there were some guys that dropped balls. That was not a, but they won. He used it with his legs because he was outstanding running the football in that game. One of the other storylines, and we've talked about this earlier in the week, and I've come around on this line of thinking after you and I talked on the video blog Monday, is the atmosphere, the crowd. How big a deal? Because we've lamented it the last 2 weeks. Nobody's gone to the games. Well, there's 30 some odd tickets left as of we're recording this on Thursday morning. That ain't going to be the case. Everybody's going to be there, and it's going to be loud on Saturday.
Which is more, and this kind of blows me away when I look back, that 2 years ago in the semifinal against JMU, the vaunted, hated James Madison Dukes was 16,000. Wasn't even close to a sell.
Nope.
And that was after a couple quarterfinal and second-round crowds that were not very good either.
Nope.
So it's a little better this year. Maybe it's because of the Rabbits.
I was going to say, how many SDSU fans do you think are a part of that? I'm intrigued to see how many Jack fans
They'll have their
tickets.
corner, but I don't think there'll be more than that corner.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see if Bison fans, hopefully, to protect their home field advantage if they did. If not, then we're going to hear the Jack fans. They were loud in October. And that scene prior to the game starting in October was all-time. When they had the flashing towels going, that was pretty darn good. And Polasek brought up, unprompted, Georgia Southern in 2012, which is what was inside of a jet engine. That was 3.5 hours of just your ears just being split open of how loud that game was.
Craig Bowl, after the game, I'll never forget that, at the postgame, he goes, I have a piercing headache.
Yep.
Piercing.
It was. And that's, can it get back to that? That's 12 years ago. I don't know because of how new it was and the excitement level, but this is everything you want. If the Bison have a chance here to stop the three-peat for the Jacks, and I know still they have to win another game after that, and what I believe is a Jack dynasty. They've won a couple. They've been the best team in the FCS the last 2+ years. The Bison can take that away from them if they're able to win the game Saturday.
I've heard the theory that, okay, because Mark Gronowski is so veteran, and he's been here, this will be his fourth time or third?
Oh, gosh, he played in, the spring of 21 he was here, the fall of 22, the fall of 24, and
this will be his fourth
game.
That you hear the theory that, the crowd, it won't bother a guy like that. And I'm going, yeah, it will. Yeah. You know why? Because when you make an audible, if you can't hear that audible, that makes a difference. It does.
The Jackrabbit offensive line is certainly the game in 22. John O'Brien, their right tackle, the transfer from Bowling Green, I think he had like 3 or 4 false starts in the first half. And they had a bunch of penalties in the game in October. Now, they've cleaned up offensively, no doubt about it, since that game. But hard-pressed to me to think that's not going to be a factor in the game on Saturday. And the Bison defense has to make it a factor as well. That was the big thing about that Georgia Southern game in 12. They forced a couple turnovers. They got to do that in this game. I don't know how they're going to.
Certainly, the Jackrabbits, as we have said all week, are playing better heading into this game.
Yep.
They are a favorite by now 3.5. It's gone up this week as we speak, as we sit here.
That means
money. And deservedly so.
Yep.
They deserve to be the favorite. I think they are the favorite. Their offense obviously has gotten better. Their defense is as good as any out there. It's their defense. You thought Mercer's defensive line was pretty good. Yeah. These guys are pretty good too.
Jack's defensive line is really good. Back end is really good.
The one difference when you look at it could be the crowd, if that can make any kind of a dent, and turnovers.
I think special teams too. Bison special teams, which has been really good, and it was a factor in the first game. Can it be as big a factor in this game around? Because Dustman, the kicker and punter, missed a field goal, and the Bison took advantage of that, and they blocked an extra point in that game in October. If they can they do that? Can they make a play, steal a possession that way to win this football game?
Agree. And again, what did Tim say this week? He said it's going to be 5 or 6 plays that are going to be the difference. He said that at his weekly press conference. And I would have to agree. I would maybe go to 3 plays, 2 or 3, but we'll see. But 5 or 6 plays, and they're called winning plays. And it could be anything. It could be 3rd and 1 and you knock a guy for a 5-yard loss, forcing a punt, and then you take the ball and score. Or it could be knocking down a pass here or there, just something that seems at the time. But those critical 3rd down plays. 3rd down is just such a big down in these games.
Griffin Wilde was not a factor in the first game. He just wasn't. He had 30-some-odd yards receiving. He's been monster. South Dakota State's top receiving target at 5 touchdowns in the last couple of games. That's a guy with a Bison secondary that is not 100%, and they're not going to be for this game. They're going to have their best there to try and stop number 18 out there. He's really good.
Yep. And the best way to do that is a good defensive line play, as we all know.
Yeah.
And which of the Bison have been really good too. You talk about Mercer and SDSU's D line. NDSU's D line. Kelton McCaslin is coming on.
So I was going to throw that name at you before I got to the other guy. McCaslin has made back-to-back plays each of the last 2 weeks. At a sack against Abilene, he almost had a strip against Mercer. He's finally healthy with that knee that plagued him basically all this season. That's a guy that at that defensive end position, if he can get loose, look out.
Yep. With him and Anene, it makes the loss of Dylan Hendricks a little less painful. And so you have that going for you. It just, but this hasn't been that shutdown Bison defense that we saw in those title years.
No.
And there's a difference. I mean, you look at the stats, NDSU scoring defense is 9th. It's good.
It's pretty good.
But rushing defense 22nd, passing defense 38th, passing efficiency defense 48th. Okay, those aren't those defenses of old with the great linebackers that they had those years and the pass rush and the Greg Menards and just you could go up and down the Jackson Hankies up and down the roster.
It's a huge challenge for Darius Givens and Jalen
good.
Crumby.
It's
really
good,
is.
but it's not at that level.
For their safeties, it's a huge challenge for Crumby and Givens. Crumby is a redshirt freshman. Givens is a redshirt sophomore. That is a monster game to not let what happened against South Dakota. Defensively, people are going to say whatever about Mercer. I thought defensively, I went back and watched the tape. They were really good defensively against Mercer on Saturday. People are going to poo-poo it about who they played. I thought they played pretty darn well defensively against the Bears in the quarterfinal game.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, I didn't evaluate the tape. Like, you're such a great mind.
I went back and watched. Yeah. I thought they looked pretty good defensively, and I know Mercer was limited in some spots, but I'll give the Bison some props there. There's another name I wanted to bring up, and that's the potential return of Luke Wirtz, who has not played the last couple of games. I don't know if they were sandbagging at Jeff to hey, you got one game. Can you give us one? Like the old Darius Shepard, Chris Kleiman story. You got one half for us. They got one game for Wirtz. How's
your back? Well, right? That's a concerning injury to me.
But if he's able to give him anything, he's a guy in that first matchup. That was his best game as a Bison in my mind.
8 tackles, led the team along with, I think, Sibamana had
Enoch was really good. And that's another name that's going to have a big game, in my opinion, is Enoch. Oscar Benson was really good in that game. Those are guys that, if the Bison want to win, they're going to have winning plays. Kopp has been a man possessed in the playoffs. He had the strip sack and the pick six against Abilene, and he was really good against Mercer. He had another sack. He's going to have to do that again this weekend.
He's going to have to be the disruptor. And that position is one at outside linebacker, and he had the game-clinching interception, if you remember, against South Dakota State in the regular season, which was a hell of a play.
Really good play. The last name I want to bring up is the quarterback. That's Cam Miller, who this is his 4th semifinal. He's still looking for that big-time passing moment. He's had running moments, obviously, against Incarnate Word. The James Madison game in 3 years ago, you mentioned, he threw the 2 touchdowns. That was all Hunter Lipke. Lipke made those plays. Cam wasn't asked to do too much. And last year, he told me when I interviewed him this week, he was rattled by the noise at Montana. He only completed 9 passes in that game. He's going to have an awesome game for the Bison to win.
That's the position to do it. Absolutely. That's the position to do it. And I'm going to go back to what we opened up with in this podcast, that I'm just curious to see if they go to the passing game earlier. And you do that because what's your best chance? If you're not convinced you can run the ball, and I'm not convinced they can run the ball,
then you put it in number 7's hands, and that means also maybe running it with him, because we saw that happen against Mercer. That, you know what, throw caution to the wind here. Let him go.
Almost Trey Lance like in the 2019 title game against James Madison.
Yep.
What did he run it like for 30 times?
30 times.
Now, I don't see that because he's not the runner that Trey is. But similarly, do you put the ball in his hands with more passing, more running, and just say, okay, you're our guy, you're our Walter Payton finalist, you've got us this far.
Ride with him. Yep.
You're completing, 3-4% of his passes, 72.9%, and say, okay, you're the guy.
Yeah,
I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that than try to win the game with Marty Brown and Barika Penu, because I don't think either of those guys will come close to 100.
But they have playmakers on the outside to try and get the ball, to your point. Like Bryce Lance has been amazing.
Mackay Collins.
Collins had
Raja.
a coming out party. Raja's been really good. Chris Harris has been underrated of his predictability. He's been really good, solid. Yes, Braylon Henderson out there to get those guys the ball in space and try and make plays there. I know it's tough against the Jack linebackers because Adam Bach's sitting back there as an All-American. That to me is where and people might be listening. You think the Bison have no chance to win the game? That's not what I'm trying to say. They have a great chance to win.
And what I'm saying is the best path to win.
Correct. For South Dakota State, they've got guys back that didn't play in this game. Large is one. Kirby Voorhees is their number 3 back, their short yardage dude. Those plays they couldn't pick up first downs with Amar and Angel Johnson in the game in October. Voorhees could be able to do that. You're talking about winning plays of keeping the Jacks on the field.
And with Amar Johnson, the Jacks have the one back who is the breakaway threat.
Yeah.
Mark can bust it.
Yep.
He's got the jets to bust it. I don't think Angel maybe a little bit. He's just a little smaller. But they have that breakaway threat in the backfield. The Bison do not.
Yeah.
Unless it's a total huge hole. I don't think either of those guys, if a defensive back has an angle on him, they can't outrun him.
Paulsek mentioned that he's not going to change up things on the offensive line. That he liked how Pontius played. What do you think about that?
It was early in the week when he said it. I just don't know.
It maybe look different come game time. There's not many combinations they can roll with here. Like we talked about it earlier in the week. If they decide to move Bo Johnson out there, who's a redshirt freshman playing right tackle, and you move Mason Miller into right guard, that's a roll of the dice.
It's all about matchups, right?
Yeah. Because you could see it. The Bison the offensive line did not have a good game against Mercer. There's no doubt on that.
Tim disagreed with that assessment, but I'm not sure if he was just saying that. But I didn't see the push. You didn't see the push.
And they got penalized. Fraley got penalized twice. Zabel got penalized, I think, twice. That was not a clean. No. Let me rephrase. It was not a clean game for the Bison offensive line.
And I just didn't see the push.
Yeah. And if you want to just go from just in that aspect, they were not moving Mercer off the ball like they have done to other teams. I'll ask you this, and this is our last thing before I want to talk about the other game quick before we wrap things up. What is the last complete game they've had? It wasn't last week. It certainly wasn't against Abilene. South Dakota didn't start. It started terribly. The last 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters was pretty good. Probably Mo State, because they blew the doors off of Missouri. That game wasn't really competitive at any stretch, I thought.
I would say you're correct.
Cam said UND. He said it's gone that long since they've played in all 3 phases was the UND game. That was early October.
Well, how do you describe Murray State then? 59-6. That was a pretty convincing 3-phase. I know
opponent has to go into that too.
Northern Iowa
Northern Iowa. They're pretty darn good.
42-19.
Yeah. Personally, to me, it was Mo State. I thought that they were on the gas pedal to start, and that game was over.
They
early.
came in unbeaten in the league with a chance to win the title, which because they couldn't go to the playoffs with the FBS reclassification. They came in with a lot to play for, and the Bison just flattened them in a quarter.
So my question is this a trend because it's been this long, or are they can you just turn it on and say we're going to have a performance today where we're not going to lose?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think the gamblers or the betting or the bookies are increasing the betting line as the more they look at this game, and as you say, the trends.
Yeah.
The more the Jacks, the line's going up in SDSU's favor.
It's a pick 'em. 3 points is home field advantage. You give the Bison 3 there, so it's going to be dynamite. Can't wait for it on Saturday. Give me a quick thought on the other game with South Dakota and Montana State. Coyotes are in their first semifinal appearance.
I feel like the Coyotes have just sort of been getting by a little bit here. Struggle with Tarleton. Could have lost the game against Tarleton. We're fortunate to get a lot of turnovers against Davis to win that game. That's not going to work in Bozeman.
No.
I just think Montana State has got it rolling. You talk about a team that has it rolling at home.
Yeah. This is their year. I'm going to give all shout out to our guy, to Sean Fredericks, because we were sitting there in Carbondale. We're doing Bison game day, and we were doing our FCS segment. He goes, I think this is Vieg's team. This is their year. And I think you and I both look like, really? Because at that time, we're looking at the Jacks we're looking at the Bison, and Montana State's out there but hadn't played anybody. And Freddie called it, and here they are. They're a win away from going back to Texas.
How about all 4 teams from 3 states that share a border?
Yep. I will go to Mike's point on that.
It's not good.
It's not good for the division. It's not. And that's a direct correlation to who is left and who's still here. And we don't have – there's no East representative. Your hope is one of those Texas schools can really get it going and join the fray like Sam Houston did for a while, but there's nobody out East, Jeff. I don't think there's anybody in the South who's going to bubble up and be really good. Like tonight, as we're recording this, there's a bowl game tonight in New Orleans. Did you see who's playing?
No.
Georgia Southern's playing Sam Houston. Combined, those 2 teams have been here 4 times in the playoffs for a semifinal game. So when you're telling me about, where we're at, and okay, it's great for the Valley to brag they got 3 teams in. Yeah, well, there's a reason why. The rest of it is not great. Now, the one counterpoint, and it's going to be a while, the Ivies getting into the playoffs is a step in the right direction. Now, can their massive endowments and their huge alumni bases say, whoa, wait a minute, you're telling me we can compete now in football? Do they get their NIL poop in a group to say, we want to spend money in football?
Boy, that's a radical shift in philosophy, though.
Yep.
I say initially no. They don't do that.
I would hope not.
I don't think they start just throwing $1 million into a collective every year. I don't see.
You don't see some Harvard doctors and Princeton lawyers saying, "Hey, we want to be good in football. Let's go."
Well, they let them.
Why not? What's to stop them now? They have it for basketball and baseball.
We're Harvard.
Well, hey,
Harvard.
that changed yesterday when they joined the party for the FCS playoffs.
Okay, that's one step to change. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's going to be 25 or 26, but I would think there are some stuffed up boosters saying, "Well, wait a minute. Now you're telling me we're going to compete because we weren't allowed to. Now maybe we can join the fray." I hope so.
One of my classmates, Dave Klein, went to Yale. Is a really good running back and had a good career at Yale. I'll ask him. Will there be a dramatic shift?
Find out for me, because I'd be
What's
intrigued.
the feeling among your alumni football player in the base?
I'd love to know that.
Okay.
Because
homework for next week.
All right. Sounds good. Again, don't forget, Bison Game Day starts everything at 10 a.m. We're leading you. We are the pregame show. We are your pregame show because we're on. The football game follows us right away, 11 a.m. on WDAY on ABC. South Dakota State, North Dakota State. Winner goes to Frisco, Texas to play in the national championship game. Have a great holiday, my man. Hope you enjoy it with your family. Happy holidays to all of our listeners out there. Enjoy the game. We'll see everybody on Saturday.